Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture series of pattern classification. I'm Kundan Kumar, and if you would like to have these lecture slides, you may refer to my GitHub page at this given link. In last few lectures, I have introduced you the pattern classification systems and design cycle, and we also discussed that feature extraction is the integral part of the pattern classification. And that is our today's topic, that is feature extraction. Various types of features can be extracted from data, whether it is one-dimensional, two-dimensional, or multi-dimensional data, but the features useful for some application may not be practically applicable in all other applications. In this lecture series, we would be covering the extraction of features with respect to image processing and computer vision applications. It doesn't mean that it will not be helpful in extracting features from one-dimensional signals like ECG or EEG signals and many more one-dimensional signals. Many concepts of feature related to two-dimensional signals came from the concepts applicable to one-dimensional signals. For example, the extraction of statistical features from an image is quite similar to the extraction of statistical features from EEG signal or vibration signals, because the definition of mean and variance is not going to change as we change the dimensionality of the signal. So there are many features which is not going to change as we change the dimensionality. So let us start our discussion that what are the topics we would be covering in this module. Under feature extraction, mainly we will talk about boundary and regions, because boundary and regions are the main characteristics of any physical object that perceive in real environment. So here we discuss the presentation and description of boundary and regions. Representation means how we represent a boundary from physical shape to a meaningful representation that a computer can understand. And description means that how that shape can be described uniquely using a feature vector. Basically, representing a region involves two choices. One is we can represent the region in terms of its external characteristics, and that is boundary, or we can represent it in terms of its internal characteristics like the pixel value comprising the region. Choosing a representation scheme, however, is only part of task of making the data useful to computer. In next task is to be describe the region based on the chosen representation. For example, a region may be represented by its boundary, and the boundary described by features such as its length, the orientation of the straight line joining its extreme points, and the number of concavities in the boundary. An external representation is chosen when the primary focus is on shape characteristics. An internal representation is selected when the primary focus is on regional properties such as color and textures. Sometimes it may be necessary to use both type of representation. In either case, the features selected as descriptors, and that should be as insensitive as possible to the variation in size, translation, and rotation. So under this topic, we would be covering the boundary representation, boundary descriptors, and regional descriptors. So there are different methods that we will cover in this lecture series. So, but there are some characteristics of the features, that the features are good or bad. So usually we look for the features that having the separability characteristics. Means we can say that the feature is good if the object from the same class have similar feature value. That means whatever the features we will extract from the objects of similar type, then the feature value should be very close to each other. And the objects from different class have different feature values. So that is the characteristic of good features. If these characteristics we don't obtain in some features, then we can say that the features are bad. That means the features simply do not contain the information needed to separate the classes. That means the features are not capable to separate the different classes that we want to separate. Doesn't matter how much effort we put into designing the classifier. Okay. So from this figure, you can understand, okay, that how the good features looks and how the bad feature looks. So if the features from the two class is separable and the features within the class are similar to each other, but the bad features are not good enough so that we can separate it using some boundary. So based on the separability, we can categorize the features like linearly separable features, non-linearly separable features, multimodal features, or highly correlated features. So based on their separability, we can categorize the different types of features. Okay. So these are the different categories and how we can represent using the figures. That means the position of the feature vectors in the feature space. So the features may have the labels. When we will deal with the supervised learning, then we must have the labels. So if we have, suppose, F1, F2 and F3, the three features, and it belongs to class 1. So this is the basically the prior information we have, and that is the class label. So in the supervised learning, we have the class labels associated with the feature vectors, so that a good model can separate these features in the feature space using an accurate boundary surface. One more thing is there, that the mapping from pattern to feature, that is unique, whereas mapping from feature vector to pattern is not immediate. And why it is so? Because many patterns may have the same feature vector. Okay. In pattern recognition or in pattern classification problems, we never talk about single features. Maybe the single feature is not sufficient to solve a problem accurately. So we always talk about the feature vectors, where we consider that the vector consists of the different components, and those components having their own characteristics in the feature space, so that the features can be separable, belongs to different classes. So if we have feature in a one-dimensional space, that means only one feature, then a single point will be sufficient to separate these features. However, if we will deal with the feature vector in two-dimensional feature space, then the dimensionality of the feature surface, that means the separating plane, will be the line. Or if we will deal with the feature vectors in three-dimensional space, then our separating plane will be a plane. And if it will be more than three-dimensional, then it will be hyperplane. So these terms we use regularly on regular basis. So let us talk about the boundary representation, that if we have an image, suppose this is the blood smear image where we have red blood cells, lymphocytes, plasma, so different components of the blood, and it will be captured in the image. So if we extract a cell from that smear image, then the cell have the property that it has nucleus, cytoplasm, and the background. So we can apply some pre-processing so that we can extract the features, useful features from the pre-processed images. So as we discussed that in pre-processing, we apply some segmentation technique if we want to extract the features from region and boundary. So this is basically the segmented output of this input image, and from this we can have the boundary of nucleus, cytoplasm, which segregate it from the background. So based on the irregularities in the boundary, we can say that the cells are healthy or unhealthy. So there are different ways to represent the boundary, and we can describe the boundary so that features can be used to separate the blood cells in the two categories, healthy and unhealthy, whether the cells are cancerous or non-cancerous. So let us discuss So let us discuss our boundary representation. So suppose we have an binary image. Binary image means the pixel value will be either 0 or 1. So if we will consider the pixel value belongs to the object, then pixel value will be 1. And if the pixel belongs to the background, then pixel value will be 0. So how a binary image can be represented as some sort of representation so that the computer will understand. Suppose we have this boundary, which is represented by the pixel value 1. So this is one image and it shows the boundary where the pixel values are 1. So now we can apply the boundary algorithm that will represent this image as the boundary so that the computer will understand. So before going to exact algorithm, let us try to understand how we can find the boundary representation of a binary image. So first we will scan from top left corner of an image, and it will scan all the pixels in the sequence. And once it will encounter the first object pixel, then it will be denoted as the B0, okay, and the preceding pixels during scan will be denoted as C0, okay. So we will store B0 as the initial point of this boundary representation. To scan the next boundary point, we will traverse the 8th neighborhood of the pixel B0 in the clockwise, and we will find that at which location we encounter the first object pixel. So in this figure, if we will scan the 8 neighbors of B0 in the clockwise, then we will start from C0 and we will scan in the clockwise. Then here we encounter the object pixel where the pixel value is 1. Then it will be denoted as the B or B1, okay, and the preceding pixel will be C1, okay. So we will store the pixel location of the object pixels that is to be stored. So in the next step, again we will start from the pixel C and we'll scan the 8 neighbors of B in clockwise, and we will check that what is the location of first object pixel which having value 1, and that scan will be in the clockwise, okay. So in the next iteration, this will be the boundary pixel, and the preceding one will be our C. So in this way we will scan all the pixels, that means we will traverse all the boundary pixels, and it will give us the boundary representation in terms of the position of the boundary pixels, so that the computer can understand in terms of the location of the boundary pixel of an object. So this is the algorithm. So let us try to understand this. Already we understand the broader idea, but this is the exact algorithm. So we will start with the starting point B0, and that is the uppermost leftmost point in the image, that is labeled 1, and labeled 1 means that is the object pixel, and we will denote the preceding pixels as C0, and that is the basically the west neighbor of B0. So clearly C0 always is a background pixel. So now we will examine the 8 neighbors of B0 starting at C0 and proceeding in clockwise direction. That means we will traverse in the clockwise direction starting from C0, and we will traverse the 8 neighbors of B0. So let B1 denote the first neighbor encountered whose value is 1, okay. Then obviously the preceding pixel will be denoted as C1, and that will be our background pixel. That is also the point immediately preceding B1 in the sequence. Then we will store the location of B0 and B1 to use in the representation of the boundary. So for the iterative process, the B is initialized with B1 and C is initialized with C1, so that we can iterate with a single variable, that will be our B variable for the boundary pixel, and C the pixel just preceding to B, and that will be our background pixel. So let the 8 neighbor of B are N1, N2 and N8. So we will start from C and we will traverse the pixels in the clockwise direction. That means we will start from C and we will proceed in clockwise direction. Find the first NK labeled as 1. Then we assign nk to variable b and we assign nk minus 1, which is the previous pixel that will be assigned to C, which belongs to the background. And then we will repeat step 3 and 4 until we will encounter B as B0. That means we will repeat until we will encounter the pixel, left top pixel belongs to the object. And the next boundary point found in B1. Okay. So the sequence of B points found when the algorithm stops continues the set of ordered boundary points. So this is the algorithm which represents the object boundary. Okay, as I shown you, the blood cell there, the boundary was there. So we performed the segmentation on the blood cell and we obtained the boundary. But how we can represent that boundary? So using this algorithm, we can represent it in terms of the pixel location belongs to the boundary of an object. So this algorithm is called the Muri boundary tracking algorithm. Okay. So in this algorithm, there is some problem that if we don't have the closed boundary, like in this case, this is the boundary, but this is not closed one because this is open here. So in that case, if we will apply the boundary representation algorithm, then we will encounter this problem and it will not traverse the complete boundary. Okay, so this algorithm will be applicable only there where we will have the closed boundary. So that we need to make sure. Okay, so this is the drawback of this boundary representation algorithm. So the boundary representation algorithm is the chain code. We can represent the boundary using the chain code. So in order to represent a boundary, it is useful to compact the raw data, that means list of boundary pixels. So once we will have the list of boundary pixels, then we can represent it in a very compact manner so that it will take less space in the memory and also it will be easier to apply some algorithm for further processing. So let us discuss the chain code. So chain codes, it is nothing but the list of segments with defined length and direction. Okay. So there are the two types of chain codes. One is 4-directional chain codes and 8-directional chain code. And these two are the encoder that we use in the 4-directional chain codes and 8-directional chain codes respectively. Okay. So note down here that we start from this position. Okay. That is the positive x-axis when we will try to correlate with the Cartesian coordinate system. And we will move in the anti-clockwise direction. So when we will consider only the 4 neighbors, then it will be the 4-directional chain code, and if we will scan all 8 neighbors, then it will be 8-directional chain code. Okay. So it may be useful to downsample the data before computing the chain code. Suppose we have a very high resolution image, then in that case, when we will try to encode using the chain code, then we will have a very large sequence and it will be difficult to handle a very large sequence. So sometimes it is very good idea to downsample the image. Suppose, so this is the image, and here you can observe that the pixel values are in high resolution. Okay, so we can divide the whole image in the grids, and then all the pixels are approximated to nearest grid points. Okay, for example, suppose this pixel value and this pixel value is close to this grid point. So this pixel will assign to this grid point. So this will be assigned to this grid point. This will be assigned to this grid point. Okay. And if we are dealing with the 8 directional, that means if we consider the 8 neighbors, then just we have to consider here that this pixel is closest to which grid point. So this will be assigned to this, this will be assigned to this. So in this way, we can have the grid points in this fashion. Okay, so as shown in this figure. And it is just because to reduce the dimension of the code. That means the less number of the numbers, less number of the code will be used. That means in the code, we will have the less number of numbers. That means the dimension of the chain code will be, that means that will be reduced. Okay. And also we can remove the small details along the boundary. So that is why we usually downsample the data. That means we don't work with the very high resolution image. Okay, we have to divide the image in the grids, and the pixels, boundary pixels, will be assigned to nearest grid, and then we will apply our chain code. Okay, so suppose you have this grid point representation of this boundary, then how we can write our chain code? So suppose we want to write our chain code using 8 directional encoder, then we will start from the top left corner of this grid. So this is our top left corner, and we will scan all the grid points related to the boundary in the clockwise. So this is our next grid point, and this is the direction, and when we will map this direction in this encoder, then we can find that this is our direction, and this direction is encoded with 0. So here we have 0. Okay, when we will move to the next grid point, which is here, so this is the direction of moving from this grid point to this grid point, and this direction in the 8 directional encoder, and this is basically 7. So next value is 7. In the same way, when we move to this grid point, and this is the direction, and this direction is nothing but denoted as 6. So here it is 6. So similarly, we will traverse all the grid points in the clockwise, and we will stop when we will get our first top left most grid point. Okay, So in this way, we have the encoded boundary representation of this object. Okay, so we can write our chain code as, so we will start from the top left corner, and we will write our chain code as it will be 0, 7. That means we will move in the clockwise direction, and we will write all the numbers that we assign to each boundary segment. Okay, so this will be 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 4, 5, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so this is our chain code. Can you write the 4-directional chain code? This is basically the 8-directional chain code, because we have used the 8-directional encoder. So if we will use the 4-directional encoder, and we will write our chain code, then it will be our 4-directional chain coded boundary. Okay, so here the same object, but we will code it using the 4-directional chain code. So again we will reduce, that means we will downsample the image boundary. Okay, we will downsample the image and we will find the grid. Okay, and we will assign the pixel value to the nearest grid. So in this case, the assignment will be based on the 4 directional. That means we have to consider only the 4 neighbors. That means we cannot omit this point, because to move from this grid point to this grid point, it will be the diagonal line segment, and that diagonal segment will represent to our 8 neighbors. That means we have to consider the 8-directional chain code to encode it. So if we want to write the 4-directional chain code, then we have to move in the 4-directional, that means 4 neighbors of the grid point. Okay, so in this way we can have all the boundary segments using the 4 connectivity, and then we will start from the top left corner and we will assign the value based on the 4-directional encoder. So this is in this direction, so it is 0. This is also in this direction, so this is 0. This is downward, so downward is 3, so it is 3. Okay, this is in the left direction, so it is 2. This is downward, so it is 3. This is 2, this is 2, this is 1, which is in upward. Okay, upward direction. Again this is 2, this is 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1. So once we have the numbers assigned to each line segments, boundary segments, then we can write our chain code as, so we will start from the top left corner and we will start writing in the clockwise. So it is 0, 0, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, okay, then 2, 3, then 2, 2, then 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, then 0, 1, 0, 1, and 1, 0, 1. So this is our chain code. And this chain code is the 4-directional chain code. Okay. So the chain code of a boundary depends on the starting point, as we have chosen the starting point as the left top corner of an object. So it depends on the starting point. So it will be rotation variant. That means once the object will be rotated, then the chain code will vary. Okay. And as we discussed that whatever the boundary representation we need, that means whatever the features we will extract, that should be the scale invariant, translation invariant, rotation invariant, and some affine or illuminance invariant. Okay. But it is very clear here that it depends on the starting point. That means it is rotation variant. So we have to make it rotation invariant, and for that we have to normalize with respect to the starting point. And how we can normalize it? That means if we will make this chain code in the, that means in the circular manner, that means if we will consider the circular sequence, then it will be independent of the starting point. So for that, a new starting point is the one who gives the sequence of number giving the smallest and largest integer. So we have to write our chain code in circular sequence, and we have to find the number which is smallest or largest, anyone. Okay. So for example, suppose we have 1, 0, 1, 0, 3, 3, 2, 2. Suppose this is our chain code. So how we can write this number or this chain code in circular sequence? That means this one will go to the end, and our new chain code will be 0, 1, 0, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1. Next, this will be go at the end. So it will be 1, 0, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 0, 0, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 0, 1. So in this way, we can form many numbers. Okay. And we have to pick up, we have to select that integer which is the largest or smallest. Okay. So just look at this integer. Okay. So from where we have to split it in circular sequence so that it will become the largest. Obviously, when we will have the most significant number and that number will be the largest number, then whatever the number we will generate, that will be our largest number. So here the 3 is our largest number in this chain code. So we can write 3, 3, 2, 2, and then rest of the preceding portion will be in the circular sequence. So it will be 1, 0, 1, 0. So when you will check it, then you will find that the largest integer that we can form using this chain code is this one. So this is our basically the normalized with respect to the initial point or initial or starting point that we have chosen to write our chain code. we should also consider the first difference of the chain code to normalize it with respect to rotation. Okay, this makes it the independent of initial point. Okay, but this will not make it completely rotation invariant. So to make it rotation invariant, we have to consider the first differential chain code. Okay, so how we can write our differential chain code? So suppose this is our chain code. So 1 0 1 0 3 3 2 2. Okay, so we have to write the first difference. So what is the difference between these two integers? Okay, so we are going from 1 to 0. So here, if we are dealing with the 4 directional chain code, so this is basically the 4 directional chain code because the highest number is 3. Okay, so this is 1 and we are moving to 0. So here we have to move in the anti-clockwise. So how many steps we are taking? 1, 2 and 3. So the difference between 1 and 0 is 3. So this is the first difference between 1 and 0. Similarly, we can find the first difference between 0 and 1. So start from 0 and start moving in the anti-clockwise and try to find 1. So when we move in the anti-clockwise direction, then we have to take only one step to reach 1. So the first difference is 1. Okay. Similarly, we can find 1 0 that we already found. So it is 3. Let us check 0 to 3. So here 0. Okay. And we have to move in the anti-clockwise. So this is 1 step, this is 2 step, and this is 3 step. So in the third step we are reaching at 3. So this is 3. So we can write the other first differential chain code. Okay, so here we counted in counter clockwise direction. We can perform in clockwise direction as well, but keep in mind that whatever the direction we will choose, that will be consistent throughout our implementation or throughout our algorithm. Okay, so for this, now we have chosen counterclockwise, so we have to be strict with the counterclockwise. And also we have to add the last transition in the circular sequence. And what does it mean? That here we computed the first difference. That means if we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, so total 8 number of integer, but in the first difference we have only 7. Okay, so one more integer is required to represent this chain code, and that is the differential chain code. So in that case we have to consider this last and the first one, so that it will be in circular. Okay, that means we have to find the first difference between 2 to 1. So here 2 and we need to reach 1. So 1 step, 2 step and 3 steps. So in the third step we will reach here. Okay, so this is our final differential chain code, which is independent of rotation, but still it is dependent on the starting point. So we have to make it independent of a starting point. That just now I discussed that how we can make it independent of a starting point. That means we have to make all possible integers using these numbers using these digits in the circular sequence, and then we have to select the integer which having the largest or smallest value. So if you will notice this differential chain code, so we can make largest integer or smallest integer. So to make the largest integer, we can write from here, that means 331333030. So this is the largest integer is possible using this chain code, or we can write the smallest one also. So it will be 030333133. So we can choose any one. So if we will consider the largest integer, then this will be our rotation invariant differential chain code. And if we will consider the smallest integer, then this will be our rotation invariant differential chain code. So, but this assumption should be consistent throughout our implementation. Okay. Might be it is not very clear to you. Let me explain it again, that how we can select the largest or smallest integer possible using these numbers. So write this number in circular sequence. So it will be 13300303, and this 3 will be at the end. 33030331, then 30303313, 30303313, 30331330, 0331330, 03 331330, 31330303. You found that this one and this one is same number, so we will not consider this one. So these are the numbers which are possible in the when we will rewrite in the circular sequence. So from this number, which is the largest number that we can find? So this one is the largest. Okay. And this is our smallest. Okay. So whatever you want to consider, whether it is smallest or largest. Okay. So in this way, we can write our rotation invariant differential chain code. So this much for this lecture. I hope I am clear to you. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section. Thank you.